The sky over New Carthage burned purple. Commander Elena Vasquez stood on the observation deck of Fortitude Station, her jaw clenched so tight her teeth ached. Through the reinforced view screen, she watched the Zalari fleet descend through the upper atmosphere, sleek crystalline ships that caught the dying sunlight and bent it into cruel rainbows. They moved slowly, deliberately, like predators savoring the chase. "Status report," she said, her voice flat. Lieutenant Hiro Tanaka's hands trembled over his console. 27 capital ships, Commander. No 31, they're still coming through the rift. Our defensive grid. Tanaka laughed, a hollow, broken sound. We fired everything. Railguns, missiles, plasma lances, the new particle beams, 3,000 rounds. The Zalari shields didn't even flicker. Elena already knew. She'd watched the battle feeds from Earth's first defense 6 months ago. The footage had been classified, but someone leaked it. 1,000 ships of the United Earth Fleet had surrounded a single Zalari cruiser and unloaded every weapon in the human arsenal for 45 minutes. The alien ship had sat there unmoving, as if amused. When they finally stopped firing, the Zalari had replied with a single message on all frequencies. "You cannot touch what exists in two places at once. Surrender is your only logical outcome." The quantum phase shield, humanity's scientists had called it impossible. Then they'd called it a miracle of physics they couldn't hope to understand. Finally, they'd called it a death sentence. The Zalari had been conquering worlds for 3,000 years. They'd never lost a battle, not one. "Commander," Tanaka said, his voice cracking. "Incoming transmission, it's them." The main viewscreen flickered and then an alien face appeared. Elena had seen hollows, but reality was worse. The Zalari had no facial expressions she could read, just smooth, opalescent skin and two large eyes that reflected the view of their own fleet. When it spoke, the translation was flawless, almost gentle. "Human colony designated New Carthage. You have observed the futility of resistance. Your planetary defenses are exhausted. Your orbital platforms are silent. Your species' strongest weapons have been weighed and found wanting." The alien paused, tilting its head. Elena realized it was waiting for her to speak. She stepped forward into the camera's view. "My name is Commander Elena Vasquez, United Earth Colonial Defense Force. I speak for the 43,000 civilians on this planet. State your terms." The Zalari's eyes shimmered. "Terms are unnecessary. You will disarm. You will submit to integration. Your population will be relocated to designated zones. In exchange, you will live." "And if we refuse?" A long silence. The alien's face didn't change, but something in the air shifted, a pressure like the moment before a thunderstorm. "Refusal has been attempted by 147 species. 147 species no longer exist. Your emotional attachment to independence is noted and understood. It is also irrelevant." The transmission cut. Elena stood alone in the sudden quiet. Behind her, the bridge crew waited, their faces pale, their eyes asking a question she couldn't answer. She'd been a soldier for 20 years. She'd trained for impossible odds, but this wasn't a battle, it was an execution. Her communicator buzzed, a private channel. She tapped it. "Commander Vasquez," a hoarse voice said, "this is Dr. Marcus Chen. I need you to listen to me very carefully. I know how to break their shields, but you're not going to believe how." She almost dismissed the call. Marcus Chen was a legend and a joke in equal measure. The physicist who'd claimed reality was a consensus hallucination, who'd been fired from every research institute on Earth, who'd spent the last 3 years in a psychiatric facility after publishing a paper titled "The Ontological Vulnerability of Quantum Phase Matrices." But something in his voice stopped her, a certainty, a desperation that matched her own. "Talk fast, doctor," she said. "We have maybe 2 hours before they start landing troops." "I don't need 2 hours," Chen replied. "I need one shot, one ship, one pilot willing to look at the devil and not blink." Elena looked back at the view screen. The Zalari fleet hung in the purple sky like a constellation of knives, beautiful, untouchable. "You cannot touch what exists in two places at once." "Where are you, doctor?" she asked. The laboratory beneath Fortitude Station smelled like ozone and desperation. Marcus Chen hadn't slept in 60 hours. His eyes were bloodshot, his beard overgrown, his lab coat stained with coffee and something that might have been his own dried blood from a nosebleed 3 days ago. But when he turned to greet Commander Vasquez, his hands were steady. "You came," he said. "I wasn't sure you would." Alina stood in the doorway, taking in the chaos, papers tacked to every wall, equations written in permanent marker on the windows, a series of diagrams showing what appeared to be a human brain next to a Zalari neural interface. 2 military police officers flanked her, their rifles trained on Chen's back. "You were committed to a psychiatric hospital, doctor. The last person to propose using your research was found dead in his cell, apparent suicide." Chen smiled bitterly. Dr. Yuki Morita wasn't a suicide, she was an assassination. The Zalari have infiltrators, Commander. They've had them on Earth for decades. Anyone who gets too close to the truth disappears. Alina's hand moved to her sidearm. "And what truth is that?" Chen walked to the largest diagram, a cross-section of a Zalari dreadnought's bridge. He tapped the center, where a pulsing blue node connected to 4 smaller nodes arranged in a diamond pattern. The quantum phase shield requires a pilot to maintain the phase state, but it's not just technology, it's biological. The Zalari have neural implants that allow them to perceive 2 realities simultaneously. Their ships exist in 2 places at once because their minds exist in 2 places at once. He turned to face her, and Alina saw something she hadn't expected: fear, not of her guns, but of what he was about to say. "The shield isn't invincible, it's just distracted. The pilot's consciousness is split between our reality and a quantum superposition state. As long as they can maintain that split, nothing physical can touch them. But if their perception shatters, if one reality becomes more real than the other, the phase collapses." One of the MPs shifted uncomfortably. "You're talking about making them, what, go insane?" Chen's eyes blazed. "I'm talking about showing them something so terrifying, so fundamentally wrong, that their minds reject the superposition. They'll snap back to a single reality, our reality, and when they do, their shields will fail for exactly 0.7 seconds, long enough for a railgun round to turn their ship into scrap." Alina processed this. The theory was insane. It was also, she realized, the only thing she'd heard in 6 months that made her feel anything other than despair. "How," she asked, "how do we show them something that terrifying?" Chen pulled a small device from his pocket, a matte black cylinder no larger than her thumb. "This is a resonance emitter. It's calibrated to interface with Zalari neural implants. When activated, it doesn't attack their minds, it gives them exactly what they want, perfect clarity into the quantum superposition." "But that's a good thing for them, isn't it? You said they need to maintain the split." "They do, but here's what the Zalari don't understand, Commander." Chen's voice dropped to a whisper. "The quantum superposition isn't empty, it's full of possibilities. Every timeline, every quantum branch, every decision they didn't make. And when you open a Zalari mind to all of those possibilities at once, they see their deaths, every version of themselves that has already died in another branch, every mistake, every loss, every child they failed to save." He held up the emitter. "I call it the ghost engine, because when you turn it on, they see their entire lives and everything they could have lost. Most Zalari pilots would rather die than look into that abyss." Silence filled the laboratory. Alina's MPs had gone pale. Even Tanaka, who'd followed her down from the bridge, looked sick. "Most pilots," Alina said finally. Chen nodded. "We need someone willing to fly within 50 meters of a Zalari dreadnought. Someone who can activate the emitter and keep it active for at least 10 seconds, even while the alien ship is firing everything it has. Someone who looks at certain death and doesn't blink." He met her eyes. "You know where to find a pilot like that, Commander." Alina thought of the Last Chance, a battered scout ship that had been scheduled for decommissioning. She thought of Lieutenant Meyer Okonkwo, the most reckless pilot in the fleet, who'd once flown through an asteroid field with her engines at 40% because the faster route was boring. She thought of 43,000 civilians on New Carthage, waiting to die. "I know someone," she said, "but you're coming with us, Doctor. If this thing fails, I want you to see it in person." Chen's smile was terrible and beautiful. "Commander, I wouldn't have it any other way." The ground shook. The Zalari had started landing. The Last Chance was falling. Lieutenant Maya Okonkwo's hands danced across the control board. compensating for atmospheric turbulence, incoming fire, and the minor detail that her ship was currently spiraling toward the surface at 800 meters per second. Behind her, Commander Vasquez gripped her harness with white knuckles. Dr. Chen had stopped screaming 3 seconds ago, not because he was calm, but because he'd run out of air. "We're going to die," Chen wheezed. "We're going to fly," Maya corrected, pulling the stick hard left. The last chance responded like a dying whale performing ballet, but it responded. A Zellari plasma bolt screamed past their starboard wing, close enough to melt the paint. "They're hurting us," Alina said, studying the tactical display. "Deliberately missing, they want us to crash." Maya grinned. It was not a sane expression. "Then let's not give them the satisfaction." "She killed the engines." For one breathless moment, the last chance dropped like a stone, straight down toward the Zellari dreadnought that had landed on the outskirts of the capital city. The alien ship was massive, a crystalline mountain that blotted out the sky. Its surface rippled with phase energy, constantly flickering between solid and ghost. "Distance to target," Maya called out. 800 meters and falling fast, Tanaka's voice crackled through the damaged comms. He was still on Fortitude Station, watching their feed. "Their point defense is spinning up. They think you're a kinetic kill vehicle." "Good." Maya slammed her palm on the engine restart. The thrusters ignited with a scream, turning their vertical drop into a horizontal skid. They hit the ground at 200 meters per second, bounced twice, and slid to a stop exactly 53 meters from the dreadnought's primary emitter array. Chen's face was the color of old cheese. "We're alive." "We're in range," Maya said. She twisted in her seat to face him. "Doctor, the ghost engine, now would be spectacular." Chen's hands shook as he pulled the black cylinder from his jacket. He'd built 5 prototypes. 3 had failed in testing. 1 had worked perfectly on a dead Zellari pilot's extracted implant. They'd never tested it on a living mind. "Activating resonance cascade," Chen whispered. "If I'm wrong about the frequency filter, it might." "Do it." He pressed the button. Nothing happened. For 3 seconds, Alina thought it had failed. The dreadnought's shields continued to flicker. Its weapons continued to charge. They were sitting ducks, 53 meters from certain death, and the miracle weapon was. Then the screaming started. It came through every channel simultaneously, radio, neural, even the ship's hull seemed to vibrate with it. A sound Alina had never heard before and would never forget. It wasn't a battle cry or a death rattle. It was the sound of something that had believed itself untouchable, discovering that it could, in fact, be touched. And worse. Much worse. The dreadnought's shields flickered once, twice, and then collapsed entirely. Maya didn't hesitate. She fired the last chance's remaining railgun round directly into the exposed emitter array. The explosion turned night into day. When Alina's vision cleared, the dreadnought was gone, not retreating, destroyed. Debris rained down on the city like crystal snow. One of the most powerful warships in the galaxy had just been killed by a decommissioned scout vessel and a madman's box of nightmares. On the bridge of the last chance, Maya Okonkwo let out a whoop that shattered the stunned silence. "Did you see that? Did you see that? I told you the faster route was." "Lieutenant," Alina's voice was quiet, "shut up and look at the sky." Maya looked. The other 30 Zellari ships had stopped moving. They hung in the purple air like stunned animals, their phase shields flickering erratically. Through the ghost engine's residual signal, Alina could feel them, not their thoughts but their emotion, a wave of pure, primal terror radiating from 30 alien minds. They'd never lost before, they didn't know how to process it. "They're scared," Chen breathed. "My God, they're actually scared of us." The comms crackled, a familiar voice, the same Zellari commander who delivered the ultimatum, but different now. The smooth arrogance was gone. In its place was something raw and shaken. "Human vessel, what did you show us?" Alina picked up the transmitter. Her hand was steady. "We showed you the truth," she said. "You're not untouchable. You never were. You just never met anyone willing to make you look." Another long silence. When the Zellari spoke again, its voice had changed completely. "Commander Vasquez, we request negotiations." Behind her, Marcus Chen started to laugh. It was the sound of a man who'd been called insane for 3 years, watching the universe prove him right. And somewhere in the depths of Zalari space, 3,000 light-years away, the High Command received their first-ever report of defeat. They didn't send reinforcements. They sent a warning. The Zalari High Command did not panic. They calculated. For 3,000 years, the quantum phase shield had been their sword and their shield. It had turned battles into formalities, sieges into surrenders, and enemies into dust. No species had ever found a countermeasure because no species had ever understood the fundamental truth. The shield wasn't technology, it was psychology. But humans had looked into the abyss, and instead of flinching, they'd weaponized it. High Admiral Thalk, commander of the Zalari expansion fleet, sat in his command chamber aboard the flagship Eternal Certainty. His neural implant fed him data from 37 battlefronts, 17 research outposts, and now, one nightmare. The Ghost Engine. His analysts had worked through the captured sensor logs. They'd reconstructed the resonance frequency. They'd even identified the theoretical mechanism, a forced quantum decoherence via targeted ontological shock. But knowing how it worked didn't make it less terrifying. "Report," Thalk said. His voice did not tremble, it never trembled. That was the point of being Zalari. A subordinate stepped forward, young, barely 300 cycles old. "Admiral, the human weapon operates by overloading the perceptual split required for phase maintenance. It forces the pilot to confront all possible outcomes simultaneously." "I know what it does," I asked for a countermeasure. "Silent." The young Zalari's eyes dimmed slightly, the equivalent of a human swallowing nervously. "There is no countermeasure, Admiral. The only way to block the signal is to disable our neural implants. Without implants, we cannot maintain phase. Without phase, our ships are vulnerable to conventional weapons." Thalk had known this answer before he asked. He'd hoped to be wrong. He rarely was. "What of the humans themselves, their homeworld, their colonies? We have 67 dreadnoughts in range of Sol, one coordinated strike." "Impossible, Admiral." This was Thalk's tactical officer, an ancient Zalari with scars across her opalescent face. "The humans have already distributed the Ghost Engine technology to every major population center. They've wired their cities with resonance emitters. If we attack, we lose every pilot in the first wave, and we have no reserves." "No reserves," Thalk repeated. The words tasted like ash. His fleet had conquered 1,000 worlds. They had never needed reserves. Their ships were untouchable. Their pilots were fearless. Their empire was eternal. And now, 3 decades of war with a species that hadn't even discovered faster-than-light travel until 60 years ago had brought them to this. A calculation with no positive outcome. "Admiral," the tactical officer's voice dropped. "There is another option, one that the High Command has authorized in extremis." Thalk's eyes narrowed. "Speak." "Extermination, not of the colonies, of Earth itself. If we accelerate a kinetic impactor to 0.4 C and launch it from the edge of the system, the humans will have approximately 4 hours warning. Not enough time to evacuate. The Ghost Engine will die with its creators." The chamber went silent. Even the ship's hum seemed to fade. Thalk had ordered planetary subjugation before. He'd ordered population relocations, industrial dismantling, cultural erasure, but extermination, the wholesale murder of a species. 8 billion humans, he thought, and for what? Because they refused to lose. "The High Command has already approved this?" he asked. The tactical officer nodded. "The launch window opens in 6 hours. The impactor is prepared. They are waiting for your authorization." Thalk closed his eyes. Behind his lids, he saw something he hadn't seen in 3,000 years, the face of his daughter, Laikari, who had died in the first human battle, not from a human weapon, but from a failed phase transition. Her implant had overloaded. Her mind had shattered. "She died screaming." "You see their deaths, every version of themselves that has already died." The Ghost Engine showed Zalari pilots their dead children, their lost loves, every branching timeline where they had failed to protect what mattered. And Thalk realized with a cold certainty that froze his ancient blood that he didn't need an emitter to see those things anymore. The humans had put them there. They lived in his mind now, parasites of possibility. "Admiral," the tactical officer prompted. Thalk opened his eyes. "Tell the High Command I need more time." There is no more time, the humans are mobilizing their fleet. Their fleet is a collection of scrap metal and desperation held together by a species that refuses to die. Do not speak to me of timetables. He stood, his full height casting shadows across the command chamber. For the first time in 1,000 years, Thalk made a decision based not on logic, but on something else. Something he'd thought the Zalari had evolved past. Fear. Open a channel, he said, to the human commander Vasquez, and prepare a diplomatic shuttle. I am going to look these creatures in the eye. His tactical officer started to protest. Thalk silenced her with a glance. If we are going to exterminate them, he said quietly, I want to understand why they made us afraid, because until I understand that, we will never be safe from them, or from ourselves. Far across the galaxy, on a battered space station orbiting a purple-burned world, Commander Elena Vasquez received a message she never expected. The Zalari wanted to talk. Not to demand surrender. To negotiate. The shuttle was beautiful. Elena Vasquez stood at the airlock of Fortitude Station, watching the Zalari diplomatic vessel drift toward them like a crystal snowflake. Its hull caught the light of New Carthage's dying sun and scattered it into 1,000 colors. Even now, even after everything, she couldn't help but admire it. Ghost engine is charged and ready, Marcus Chen said from behind her. His voice was calm, too calm. If they try anything, I can flood this whole section of space with resonance frequencies. Their pilots will be seeing their own funerals from 3 different timelines. Let's hope it doesn't come to that, Elena said. The airlock cycled open. High Admiral Thalk was smaller than she'd expected. Zalari physiology was difficult to read, no facial muscles, no body language she could translate, but something about him seemed diminished. His shoulders curved inward, his 2 large eyes moved too quickly, as if searching for threats that weren't there. He came alone. Commander Vasquez, he said, the translation was perfect as always. I am Thalk. I command the fleet that was sent to destroy you. Elena didn't offer her hand. You were sent to destroy us, past tense. Thalk's head tilted in almost human gesture. The High Command has authorized extermination of your homeworld. A kinetic impactor is scheduled to launch in 3 hours. I have delayed the order, but I cannot stop it. Only you can. The air in the room changed. Chen's hand moved toward the ghost engine's trigger. Maya Okonkwo, stationed at the window with a sniper rifle, shifted her aim to Thalk's center mass. Why would we help you stop something you're doing to us? Elena asked. Thalk was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, rougher, less translated. Because I have seen what you showed my pilots. The ghost engine did not create those visions, Commander. It merely uncovered them. They were always there. Every Zalari carries the weight of every timeline where we failed, where our children died, where our empire crumbled. We have simply spent 3,000 years learning not to look. He stepped closer. Elena didn't back down. Your weapon didn't break our shields, Thalk continued. It broke our denial, and now I cannot unsee what I have seen. My daughter, she died in your system, Commander, not by your hand, by her own mind's failure. She saw a future she couldn't bear and chose to let the phase collapse rather than face it. Elena felt something crack in her chest. She'd lost people too. Friends, soldiers, civilians who'd trusted her to protect them. I'm sorry, she said, and meant it. Thalk's eyes shimmered. Do not apologize. Offer me something else. A way out. The High Command will not stop. They will send more impactors, more fleets. They will burn your worlds one by one until either you are extinct or we are. But if you have another option, something that doesn't require us to live in denial forever. He looked at the ghost engine, at Chen, at Maya with her rifle. You changed the rules when you built that weapon. Now change them again. Marcus Chen stepped forward. His face was pale, but his eyes were burning. The quantum phase shield, he said slowly, requires your pilots to maintain a split consciousness. What if we could help them integrate, not shatter the superposition, but expand it? Show them not just the deaths, but the lives, the timelines where they succeeded, where their children lived, where their empire became something other than conquerors. Thalk's entire body went rigid. You're proposing a new phase state. I'm proposing that your species has been hiding from reality for 3,000 years, and it's killing you. The ghost engine proved that your minds can't sustain the denial forever, so stop denying, evolve. Silent. Outside, the purple sky was darkening. Somewhere far away, a kinetic impactor was being aimed at Earth. Alina imagined her homeworld, the blue marble, the 8 billion lives, the children who'd never see another sunrise. She looked at Thauk, at the ancient alien who'd come alone, unarmed, into enemy territory. You came here to negotiate, she said. So negotiate, what do you want? Thauk's answer came without hesitation. To stop being afraid. Every moment of every day we are afraid of death, of failure, of the quantum abyss, and we have built an empire on that fear. If you can teach us to live without it, I will make your species unstoppable, not as conquerors, as something better. He extended his hand, a gesture he'd learned from observing humans. Teach us, Commander, and we will never raise a weapon against your kind again. Alina looked at Chen, at Maya, at the viewscreen showing Earth, small and fragile and waiting for salvation or destruction. She took Thauk's hand. Dr. Chen, she said, how fast can you build a device that shows people hope instead of nightmares? Chen's grin was exhausted and wild. Give me 12 hours. You have 3. Then you'd better clear the room. The device was called the Anchor. Marcus Chen had worked for 72 hours straight, fueled by coffee, adrenaline, and the terrified knowledge that Earth's remaining time had shrunk to 90 minutes. The ghost engine had shown Zalari their worst selves. The Anchor would show them their best, the timeline where they faced their fears and survived, where their children grew old, where their empire became a protector instead of a predator. It was, Chen admitted, the most dangerous thing he'd ever built. If this fails, he told Alina as they prepared for the broadcast, every Zalari within range will experience a cascade failure. Their minds will shatter, will kill thousands of pilots instantly. And if it works? Chen looked at the Anchor, a crystalline sphere that pulsed with soft light, connected to every transmitter on Fortitude Station. If it works, we change the galaxy forever. The Zalari fleet had gathered in orbit around New Carthage. 67 dreadnoughts, hundreds of support vessels, thousands of pilots waiting for the order to exterminate Earth. High Admiral Thauk had bought them time, but the High Command's patience was exhausted. The impactor was armed. The countdown had begun. Elena opened a channel to the entire fleet. Zalari pilots, my name is Commander Elena Vasquez. 3 days ago, we showed you your worst nightmares. Today, we're going to show you something else. She nodded to Chen. He activated the Anchor. The effect was immediate and nothing like the ghost engine. Instead of screams, the comms filled with gasps. Instead of terror, wonder. The Anchor didn't force Zalari minds to confront their deaths. It showed them their lives, every branching timeline where they had chosen courage over fear, connection over isolation, love over duty. Thauk, on the bridge of the eternal certainty, saw his daughter Laikari. Not dying, living. He saw the timeline where he had refused the mission to Saul, where Laikari had never been implanted, where she'd grown old, had children of her own, laughed at his terrible jokes, and died peacefully in her sleep at 800 cycles. He saw what the Empire had stolen from him. And he wept. Across the fleet, thousands of Zalari pilots experienced the same revelation. They saw the children they'd never had, the friends they'd abandoned, the art they'd never made, the worlds they'd destroyed. They saw themselves not as untouchable gods, but as frightened children hiding behind quantum walls. And they saw, for the first time, that they could choose differently. The impactor, Thauk whispered, the launch order, has been countermanded, his tactical officer said. Her voice was trembling. Thauk had never heard a Zalari tremble. The High Command is experiencing the Anchor's signal. Admiral, they're recalling the fleet. Thauk didn't believe it, couldn't believe it. 3,000 years of conquest, undone by a single human device that showed them how to feel. But the sensor data was clear. Dreadnoughts were turning away from Earth. The impactor's guidance system had been remotely disabled. Across the Zalari Empire, on 1,000 worlds, pilots were removing their neural implants, not because they were forced to, but because they finally understood what the implants had cost them. The Anchor hadn't destroyed the Zalari. It had saved them. Epilogue 1 year later. Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the new beginning, watching Earth grow large on the view screen. Beside her, Marcus Chen typed furiously at a console, updating the anchor's algorithms. Maya Okonkwo was at the helm, humming something tuneless. Thalk stood at her other side, his form different now, softer somehow. He'd removed his neural implant 6 months ago. His eyes still reflected too much light, but they also held something new, peace. Humanity has changed us, he said quietly, not through conquest, through compassion. Elena shook her head. We showed you a mirror, you did the rest. The new beginning was the first joint human-Zalari vessel, equipped with both quantum phase technology and anchor emitters. Its mission was simple: travel to the edges of explored space, find species living in fear, and offer them a choice. You could hide from reality forever. Or you could face it together. The Council is ready for you, Chen said, looking up from his console. Earth's leaders and the new Zalari Assembly, they want to ratify the Accord. The Accord, the document that had ended 3,000 years of conquest in a single signing ceremony. The Zalari Empire was no more. In its place was a confederation, humans and Zalari and a dozen other freed species, building something new. Elena took a deep breath. Let's go make history. She walked toward the airlock, Thalk beside her. Behind them, Maya started the landing sequence. Chen packed up his equipment, muttering about calibration frequencies. On the view screen, Earth turned slowly, blue and green and impossibly fragile. The species that had been called weak, primitive, and desperate had looked into the face of an invincible empire and refused to blink. They hadn't won through superior firepower or brilliant tactics. They'd won by reminding the galaxy what it had forgotten. That fear wasn't strength. That hiding wasn't survival. And that the most dangerous thing in the universe wasn't a weapon. It was hope. The end